Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the third workshop in BCCI's new Survive and Thrive Small Business Series. My name is Betty Brathwaite, and I'm the Vice President of Finance of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'm delighted to be your moderator today. The Chamber is pleased to be able to host this series of workshops, which are aimed at assisting small and medium sized businesses in pivoting through the ongoing global crisis. With the downturn of the economy, whether as a result of the pandemic or other factors, we have seen an uptick of entrepreneurship and a growth of small businesses. But what are the options available to those small businesses for finance? Today's workshop focuses on the topic financing options for small business. This workshop series could not have been hosted without the kind contributions and support of our sponsors. The Nation Publishing Company Limited, Fund Access, the Business and Employment Center, Deloitte Barbados, RDL Eagle Trading Inc., and Guardian General Insurance Limited. We wish to extend sincere appreciation to these organizations for their support and partnership as we seek to assist members of the business community to navigate these challenging times. Now, before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. For those joining us on Zoom, if you have any questions during the session, please type them in the question box in your Zoom control panel, or you may also use the raise hand feature to alert the team that you wish to unmute your mic and ask a question directly. We will have a question and answer session following the presentation. For those joining via Facebook, please feel free to share your questions with us via the comment section. So let's officially start the event. And to officially start, let me introduce Mrs. Misha Laban Clark, Executive Director of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who will be giving the welcome remarks at today's session. Over to you, Misha.
Thank you very much, Betty, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the third of four dynamic workshops in the Barbados Chamber of Commerce's new Survive and Thrive Small Business Series. We officially launched the series with the first workshop on Thursday, November 18th, which explored the timely topic enabling innovation and digital transformation for businesses. The second session in the series focused on the topic Marketing and Service Excellence as a Winning Strategy. And today's session will provide a key insights into financing options for small businesses as you seek to survive and thrive in today's challenging environment. The financial impact of the pandemic on businesses has been wide ranging, ultimately leading to losses in revenue, reduced capacity, both human and operational, and even permanent closure for some businesses. In the early stages of the crisis, many businesses locally sought to access government grants and subsidies in order to stay afloat in the short term. Currently, with the prolonged pandemic, access to business development financing in order to ensure sustainability and growth in the medium to long term is now a major priority for many small businesses. Recognizing the critical role that small and medium-sized enterprises (SMEs) play in the continued growth of the Barbados economy and the need to provide critical support to the business sector, the Barbados Chamber has been implementing business recovery and resilience initiatives to support small and medium-sized businesses during this crisis. This, of course, is a key pillar, a strategic priority rather, for the Barbados Chamber as it continues to advance the interests of the business sector and support the rebuilding of a vibrant and strong business ecosystem in Barbados. It is against this background that the Survive and Thrive series was conceptualized to help small and medium-sized businesses in Barbados gain the relevant tools and strategies to ensure their continued success during this current climate, while positioning their businesses to drive economic diversification and growth that is critical to the future sustainability of the Barbados economy. The Survive and Thrive workshop series has been made possible, as Betty indicated, through the collaboration and support of corporate sponsors, the Nation Publishing Company Limited, Fund Access, the Business and Employment Center, Deloitte Barbados, RDL Eagle Trade Inc., and Guardian General Insurance Limited. And we publicly, on behalf of the Chamber, I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank them for readily agreeing to come on board and provide financial support for this important initiative. In closing, I encourage you participants to fully capitalize on the tools and guidance that will be shared by finance professional and director at Deloitte, Mr. Raymond Haynes, who will facilitate today's session on the critical topic, finance options for small businesses. I thank you and wish you a very fruitful and productive session. Over to you, Betty. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those kind words of welcome, Misha, and for speaking a little bit about the strategic direction that the Chamber is going to assist businesses through these difficult economic times. You've certainly set the tone for today's session. So this event has been made possible by our sponsors, and we will now take a quick break for a video from our silver sponsor, Fund Access.
It is often said that the longest journey begins with the first step. And here at Fund Access, we give you the courage to start your journey, to grow, to live your dream. For more than 20 years, Fund Access has been empowering entrepreneurs through access to finance, business training, and technical assistance. So whatever stage you're at, we can help. Call us at 228-1366 or visit us online at www.fundaccess.org. Fund Access, empowering entrepreneurs.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the facilitator for today's session, a well-seasoned finance professional, Mr. Raymond Haynes. Raymond is a director in financial advisory at Deloitte, where he has a focus on clients in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. With a wealth of corporate finance and financial advisory experience, Raymond has advised key stakeholders on assignments involving M&A advisory, valuation analysis, corporate restructuring, due diligence, financial analysis and modeling, and capital raising spanning a number of clients and industries, including banking and insurance. He brings over 15 years of international experience serving government, corporate, and private equity clients on complex financial advisory engagements. And when he's not so busy doing all that in his spare time, he finds time to speak on financial literacy to small business. Welcome, Raymond.
Thanks, Betty, and good morning to everyone. Just confirming that everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, look, certainly thanks to the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting me here today. Always excited to talk about finance, certainly to support the small business sector. As a matter of fact, a couple months ago, I believe, I gave a very similar presentation to the Small Business Association. So quite happy to reiterate the message. And for those who were on that session, perhaps you have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may not have at that point in time. So thank you, and good morning to everyone. And we certainly can get started with the presentation. First, I mean, as Betty would have mentioned, just a bit of housekeeping, and I'll just confirm that everyone can also see the slides that are being presented.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Fantastic. So financing options for small businesses. And just a bit of a housekeeping, as I mentioned before, today's presentation is really educational and informative. And I wouldn't say that it presents the views and opinions and advice of Deloitte for any particular entity or person on the call. It really is introductory. We presented some topics that are not necessarily widely available in Barbados, and the topic is on also alternative financing, and is unlikely to cover all of the areas of interest for the persons on the call. But what is going to be very important part of this segment and this session is for the questions and for persons to contribute their thoughts. And looking forward to those questions and looking forward to the discussion. Now, first off, we talk about the resilience framework. And, it was interesting that the Chamber has selected Survive and Thrive because that is going to be important. And part of Deloitte's framework itself and the resilience framework, as we look to all crises and certainly the COVID-19 pandemic, we've created a framework around respond, recover, and thrive. And certainly the situation that we're currently in right now. As it says here, true effective crisis management goes beyond being reactive, simply protecting the existing value. What we really need to do is to enable the organization to emerge stronger from this crisis and certainly any crisis that it faces. Business recovery is important, and you would have heard the executive director talk about the chamber helping its members recover and the tools and whatnot that they're also put into place to help those businesses recover. And so business recovery, strive and thrive. There are going to be market influences, proposed initiatives that the business is looking at. And it's going to be so important for a number of scenarios to be assessed and developed in order to reassess the operational plan, in order to reassess the financial plan, and to look at various financing options. So certainly the topic that we're talking about today helps the business around those financing options. Multiple scenarios are going to give you multiple financial requirements and considerations for alternatives. So let's get into it today. We have three broad categories of fundraising. There's equity, debt, and awards. Alternative financing, as it may be defined, refers to the forms of finance that are outside of traditional finance systems, such as the banking system. Right? So, if we had a topic today talking about bank financing, I'm certain that almost everyone, if not everyone, would be fairly familiar with what is needed, what they need to do, what the challenges are, and perhaps also what the benefits of bank financing would be. In terms of alternative financing, what I want to talk about today would be.
Hi, Raymond.
Hi, Betty.
Hi, I think we need to take a little quick break right now.
Okay, no problem.
Life is complex. Everything interconnected, in constant flux. A simple shift in focus can reveal hidden issues and unearth new opportunities. At Deloitte, we make it our priority to look again and to dig deeper beneath the surface, analyzing the many intricate issues that businesses face, providing insights that help turn risks into opportunities, disruption into growth, information into transformation, helping our clients focus on the heart of what really matters. And with these insights, even the most complex problems can become new possibilities. This is what we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, our apologies. We just had a slight technical issue that we had to resolve. You know how it is when you're going live, things will happen. But back to Raymond now. Thank you.
No problem. So let's see if those slides are up. Then I'd want to go back to the resilience framework very quickly. So we had some technical difficulties. I felt it wasn't a crisis. I wouldn't call it a crisis, but we responded. Hopefully, we recovered, and I'm well on my way to thriving. So this is the resilience framework that we would have gone through. As I said, it really is about enabling the organization to emerge stronger, and happy that the chamber is putting those facilities in place and putting those tools and the opportunities in place to help their membership, help the membership recover. Business recovery, strive and thrive, as I was talking about. So many influences impacting the business, and it really gives now this opportunity to reassess the operational plan and your financial plan, and through various scenarios that I'm sure all the key executives, whether big, small, micro businesses are looking to do, through those scenarios, helps you to reassess your financial options. And multiple scenarios are going to reveal different financial requirements, whether it is for stock, to grow the business, to get a new plant, to get new machinery, etc., and to look at the alternatives that may be available. And quite really the topic of conversation this morning. As we look at it, as I defined before, alternative financing refers to the form of finance that is outside the traditional finance system of banking. And today we're going to be looking at very briefly equity financing, angel financing, crowdfunding, peer-to-peer, and then also have a quick view of some of the local options that I was actually pleasantly surprised, or maybe not so pleasantly, that persons had not heard about, organizations such as Fund Access, who is a sponsor today, and some of the other options available for financing in Barbados, both debt and equity, and we'll take a peek at that as well. So equity financing, the topic here should come as no surprise for the participants on the call. A process of raising capital through the sale of the shares or stock of your company. And equity investors typically have an ownership interest or stake in the business, and that ownership interest or stake can be through common shares or preference shares. Again, the business may be a public venture or it may be privately owned. I imagine most of the businesses and persons on the call have a private enterprise, not necessarily as a corporation. It could be as a sole proprietorship, but most of those businesses are privately owned. And how does it work? Investors will do, and the company will evaluate the business and the options and the amount of money that is required. You will try to prepare for marketing, going out to market to search for those investors. You will have conversations and present your business idea or present your business to the investors, and you'll solicit their interest. And hopefully by the end of it, you're successful and you can execute and close on your equity financing. There are pros and cons with equity financing. There's no repayment obligation, certainly with common shares. You're hoping to get a return on the money that the investors have put in. Less financial burden on the company, and by that, there's no repayment obligations. So there's not a set schedule of when cash flows need to happen to those equity investors. Cons, certainly higher expected rates of return, higher than debt, in terms of the expectation. If someone is going to put their equity investment into the business, then they're hoping, for a bigger return, especially if there's not a scheduled set of repayments, especially if they don't have collateral being held against the business, etc. So higher expectation of higher returns. In terms of what equity holders are expecting, certainly is a share of the business. If they're going to put their money in and their ownership in the business, then there is a dilution of the principal ownership in the business, and investors are also looking for a share of the profits, a share of that return. Now, the sources of equity financing, as we'll get into today, of course, everyone knows about stock exchanges and not necessarily how they all work, but the availability for capital and raising equity capital through a stock exchange. There are equity investors, venture capitalists, and I'll try to differentiate very quickly between angel investors and VCs, as we call them. We'll talk about crowdfunding, and we'll talk also a bit about peer-to-peer lending. Some new concepts to persons. Other persons certainly have heard about crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending before. Angel investing, and I think once I've given this presentation a couple of times, and people always wonder, why is this man sitting in the dark? Is it the best representation for an angel investor? No, it tells different stories. The angel, because there's a halo around there, you're certain sometimes persons willing to put money into your business can be seen as they're called angels. Sometimes they like to stay in the background, and probably that's the other message for the image here. But what is it? Angel investors can be individuals or they can be groups. And typically, they're persons who have money available to give to a business. and typically they're high net worth individuals. Now, angel investing can go to fund a business or it can go to expand a business. So if the business is already in operation, there's an opportunity to get into a different market, to offer a different business line. Angel investing may very well be the option or be an option. And it provides, again, capital in exchange for ownership of the business. Now, typically, and I've had a question on a previous presentation, what is the difference then for what I've heard around venture capitalists? And I would say, angels can be seen as investors, individual investors. Venture capitalists generally is a company or enterprise who is pooling money either from a wealthy individual or from a group of individuals or the structure of a mutual fund, to bring the money to the business. So not like in this day and age, it doesn't necessarily fit squarely into a box, but maybe the key differentiation between the two is angels, typically investors, high net worth investors, venture capital and venture capitalists, an enterprise that is pooling money from other individuals, groups, other businesses perhaps, to help you invest. How does it work? So investors are going to identify an opportunity and select the company that they want to work with. And perhaps there's a similar search structure under the equity option, equity that I talked about before. The startups are going to pitch to potential investors. The investors or the angels are going to review that pitch, and then both parties are going to agree and connect on the terms. How much am I going to put in? What is that going to be worth in terms of upfront money? Am I going to get 30%, 50% of the business? Am I going to get a majority interest or minority interest? And then perhaps there are multiple rounds that need to be filled, right? So you put an initial amount in till you get to a certain point, and then additional funds go into at a particular point until the investment is completed, so to speak. And then you close the deal. So typical structure of search and selection and closing, very simple, going through an angel as you would with any kind of fundraising process. Pros and cons, similar pros and cons to equity. Perhaps working with an individual makes the financing quicker. They can decide whether they're interested in the business or not, and they can very quickly decide that they want to put their money in. It's their money. So certainly that speeds up the opportunity to close the deal, so to speak. Angel investors, because of their high worth nature, this is not their first rodeo. It may not be their first rodeo of putting money into a company. It may not be their first time actually running a business. So I think small businesses have the opportunity to learn from angel investors. You get their knowledge, you get their experience. And sometimes, and most times, what you'll see is that rather than staying in the absolute background, an angel investor may opt to sit on the board, or the company may actually ask the angel investor, can you help me out? Can you, sit on my board, give me strategic advice, point me in the right direction for financing, strategy, operation advice, whatever the case may be. And all the other advantages, I would say, are similar advantages to equity finances as we discussed, certainly is applicable to angel investing. With everything else, pros and cons, there are some cons associated. If you're not willing to give up a piece of your business, almost too bad. Angel investors are likely, if they're going to give you their money, unlikely that they want to go the debt route. They will want to have an ownership stake in the business. Higher expected returns, there's risk involved, and then therefore, whereas you may be paying back interest to a financial institution of 5 or 6 or 7%, 8%, could be higher. The expectation is that if they're taking this extra risk, then they want higher returns out of the business. It may not be a dividend every year, but certainly in terms of the growth of the business and the increase in the value of their stake, or actual dividends at some point in time, whether it's year 5, whatever the case may be, there is that expectation that it's going to be higher than if they simply gave a debt interest. As we all know, we're sitting on this call talking about alternative financing and talking about financing options. There's limited access in the region. As a matter of fact, as we go through this, and I went through this presentation with my team as we were preparing, we were looking for angel options out there. Now, I'm not saying that, you may know an individual that you can approach and have a conversation with and seek financing, but to be able to go on a website locally and to find those options, in Barbados or across the region is not as easy as if you walk into a financial institution with what they can provide and seek the financing. So where can you access angel investors? Friends and family. I've heard some investors or some, not investors, sorry, business owners say, look, I don't want to be in business with my friends and family. That could erode the relationship. But they know you, they know the struggles that perhaps you've gone through to build your business. And if there are family members and friends that you trust, maybe it's a good place to start. Again, of course, they're wealthy individuals, and that's where networking comes into play. If through networking, you can liaise with wealthy individuals who are willing to diversify their own investment portfolio and get into business with you based on a really good pitch, then absolutely they're an option. Angel syndicates and groups, there are always groups around where people pool their money and try to look for investment options. I would say they are an option for you. Peer-to-peer lending, which we'll talk about later, that's an option that perhaps we can hopefully see a little bit more of in Barbados. And we'll also talk about crowdfunding as well. So let's move on. Let's talk about crowdfunding and what that entails. What is it? We've heard about crowdfunding, and I'll talk about some of the options that we've heard about, such as GoFundMe, etc. But through crowdfunding, funding is obtained from contributions from a large group of persons. So rather than going to one individual to raise, let's say, $100,000 for the investment, perhaps it is, through a platform, you get a number of persons to put in $1,000 or $50 or whatever the case may be until you get to your particular goal. It can be donation-based or it can be investment-based. The donation, for a charity or for particular rewards, or equity or debt on the investment side. Many of the crowdfunding that we've seen, a lot of it has been around charities, and we are seeing more and more on the investment side. It may fund startups or startup companies, or through the donation part of it and through the rewards angle, it can introduce new products and services. So typically, what I've seen is that if someone or if a business is going to introduce a new product or service or thinking about it, they go and they present the idea on a crowdsourcing or crowdfunding platform, and they offer rewards. If you put money so that I can launch this product or service, maybe you get first access to it, maybe you get a reward or continued rewards for the product or the service that is being offered. So different options around crowdfunding. Very, very typically, and maybe the only way that I've seen is that, and I'm sure there are other options, is you have an online platform that is out there like GoFundMe and some of the other ones that you've seen or may have seen, and I'll raise on the next slide. But typically you use social media to really push the idea and push the concept and to raise the finance and market the campaign. And how does it work? Well, you create a crowdfunding profile. And really talk about your funding goal, what is the product, what is the objective. You market that through the crowdfunding platform and campaign. And as I said, you can also use social media to help market your idea and market the venture. And then you collect, as simple as that, you start collecting the donations. I say simple, but nothing is simple. And as we talk about, there needs to be facilitation and awareness around all of these sources and options of alternative finance in order for it to work, but certainly a topic that we'll get to later on in the presentation. Pros and cons. Easier than traditional funding. You go to the platform, you go through the marketing exercise, and you raise the money. It serves as a marketing tool because going through the GoFundMe and also putting your business out there on social media and creating hype, creating awareness, is probably a good source of marketing for the business as well. And it also allows the persons who are willing to put their money forward to add some ideas. If persons are going to put their money in, they're going to want to find out more about the business, more about the idea, more about the product, more about the service. And they give their pros and cons. Can that work? Maybe you should try this. Have you considered this, etc. No, not every idea you have to consider or take on board. But I'm sure in that process, there are likely to be some ideas that makes it or improves the product, improves the service before it's actually launched out to the market. Cons, there is the possibility of not reaching the goal, and sometimes what you'll see with some platforms is that it's all or nothing. If you set a really high goal, let's say $1 million, I mean, it may be unrealistic for some businesses, it may be right on the money for other businesses, and you don't reach that goal sometimes, you don't get any of the money, and those funds or the pledges are not taken up or returned. So you got to also select the program and the facility, the online facility that works with the goal that you're trying to achieve, what the objective is. Sometimes creating the crowdfunding campaign can outweigh the rewards. And some of these platforms, they charge fees, so you have to be fully aware of what those fees are. On the right, you can see some of the crowdfunding platforms are available. Everyone, and I've repeated a number of times, have probably heard about GoFundMe, but there's Kickstarter, Vision Funder, and Patreon. Some of these platforms can be very specific to opportunities, whether it is you want to raise money for technology or the way they go about raising the financing. As I mentioned before, some of them could be all or nothing. Now, peer-to-peer lending is a concept that is not new to Barbados. For those who may be aware, Carry Lending is in our market, and they do have a peer-to-peer lending structure and lending platform. But let's talk a little bit about peer-to-peer lending, because it doesn't have to be on a debt basis, right? And we can talk about raising financing and the way that it is paid back. So what is it? It is for sure a form of crowdfunding. You have a number of individuals who are putting money into a platform potentially, and that platform or that facility is then giving money to the persons who need to raise finance. It typically is debt-based, but it could be equity-based as well. I'm not aware of any equity-based peer-to-peer platforms available in Barbados and certainly the region, but it doesn't have to be only debt-based, as is the one that is offered in Barbados. Allows one person or many to lend money directly to those who may need it. And there are different peer-to-peer lending platforms. The structure that we may be aware of here in Barbados is such that there is a middle entity, so to speak, that is facilitating the money going to the individuals who need the money and for the individual lenders who are putting the money in. That structure doesn't necessarily need to be, that's not the end all or be all of all the peer-to-peer lending structures. Sometimes you go onto the platform, similar, again, it is a form of crowdfunding. You put the money in and the investors choose in the peer that they want to line up with, right? So, the borrower, so to speak, goes to the platform and says, look, I'm looking to raise $500,000, and maybe they get that from one individual, or perhaps they get that from a number of persons who are interested in the idea, but certainly allows for that interaction between the investor, so to speak, and the investee. You do require an enabling platform, fintech, so to speak, that the persons on both sides, the persons giving the money, the investors, and the persons receiving the money, the investees, can interact with each other. Unsecured funding is most common, for sure. Of course, once you get into collateral, then you're looking at paperwork, you're looking at more of a legal framework around that. So I would say typically you're looking at unsecured financing in a peer-to-peer lending structure. Individuals borrow the money. Individuals borrow and lend the money to and from one another. I think that is the key concept around the peer-to-peer lending. Now, in that discussion, I would have talked generally about how it worked. Typically, you log on to the fundraising platform. You select the amount that you want to borrow and the length of time and some of the other terms and conditions that you may want to put forward. An application is submitted. The platform determines a level of credit risk assessment and perhaps assigns a rating and the interest rate that may be assigned to the level of risk that is applicable to you as the borrower or the investee. And alternatively, applicants may actually put forward or choose the investors that they want to work with and the investment and the terms and conditions of that particular investment. So there are different structures. It doesn't have to be one or the other that works and is available. As with everything else, as we've talked about, pros and cons. Again, Once those options are available, it can be fast and convenient method of financing. You create your pitch, so to speak, you put that forward, and you see who is interested out there, or in the structures that are more, or the structure that's available in Barbados. If you have to raise funds for a particular instance, generally on an individual basis, you go to the platform, you make an application, they pool the funds, and they give you the amount that you need, so to speak. The use of technology, platform, managed financing, it makes it a little bit easier, a little bit more interactive, readily available, so to speak. In terms of the cons, the cost of debt may not be dissimilar to traditional financing, depending on how the platform is structured. So, for example, if traditionally you can go to the bank, you can get financing at 8 or 12%, whatever the case may be in this current market, or as low as 5%, 4.5%, 4%, whatever the case may be, going to the peer-to-peer facility or platform, it may not be dissimilar to what is out there for traditional financing. The ease of accessing the money, the ease of repayment, etc., that may outweigh certainly the cons. Limited access to the international market. For us, certainly, around credit scores, we don't have easy credit scores available, at least not widely known or widely facilitated on island. Certainly something that we also need to make sure that becomes a little bit more commonplace in the market, right? So that investors themselves, as they choose to give money, perhaps that becomes one of the benchmark, one of the criteria before they give their money over. And certainly an interesting concept that we can talk about later on in the presentation. Protections may be limited. If the majority of funds being handed over are unsecured, then the protections may be limited, for the lenders, and something to consider. Where can you access? We are aware, or most of us are probably aware of, in Barbados, of CarryLend, but certainly, quick search on the internet will find some of the other popular ones. So Funding Circle, Peerform, and Lending Club. All right, so we've talked about angel financing, we've talked about crowdfunding, and we've talked about peer-to-peer lending. I want to look at some of the local options that we have available, not necessarily in these categories, but I thought it'd be remiss of me to talk about options that persons may not have heard about in Barbados. I'm sure the participants on the call have heard about, the likes of Enterprise Growth Fund, trust loans, and maybe less so about the Enhanced Credit Guarantee Fund and the Industrial Credit Fund that the central bank administers. So Enterprise Growth Fund, as we have on the screen here, it does provide debt and equity to Barbadian small business, micro businesses, and other enterprises. And they can the fund manager for other funds that are offered in Barbados. So very much an administrator and fund manager for the Agricultural Development Fund, the Innovation Fund, Tourism Loan Fund, etc. As a matter of fact, I recently had some conversations with persons looking to raise funds both for agricultural purposes and tourism purposes. And those two funds and an approach to Enterprise Growth Fund probably made sense. Now, certainly, but given that they do facilitate, as fund managers, access to money under these funds, it probably made sense for an approach there. Of course, back in 2018, I believe it was, the government of Barbados would have rolled out the trust loan program, right? So for more geared towards, I would say, micro enterprises. So, up to $5,000 for first-time applicants, negotiable moratoria, and 5% interest rates. So certainly something to consider on the micro enterprise side of it. And then we have the Enhanced Credit Guarantee Fund and the Industrial Credit Fund. The central bank acts as the administrator, so to speak, and administers these financing schemes in an effort to, more easily make financing available in Barbados. But in order to access that funding, you have to go to an authorized financial intermediary. So that may be one of the banks in Barbados, and I believe also Consolidated Finance is one of those authorized financial intermediaries. And all the information on these options are available online, and certainly something to consider from a local perspective. Of course, we do have our sponsor fund access. Their key is really about developmental financing for micro, small, and medium enterprises in Barbados. When we consider, I thought it was quite interesting the different options available, whether it's Business Boost, Business Escalator, Innovator, Facilitator, and Pro. And based on the ads that you're seeing, you can get a better idea and appreciation of what fund access offers. I think what is even more important for some of the options that I've raised here today, and there are others that are out there, is they're not just handing money over. I think there's also the opportunity to go through training and to have a business officer or a business development officer assigned to work along with you and the business. So not only is financing available, but in some of these things, you have someone with experience who's working along with the business, helping you to navigate those challenges as well. So let's talk about, as a quick summary, I wanted to talk about some of the key elements for the development framework. We've talked about crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending. How do those become more readily available in our markets, whether it is Barbados or the Caribbean? And I think there are three key elements to that. There's the platform and the technology. COVID-19 happened to us, and we find ourselves doing a lot more online, whether it's shopping, whether it's banking, even down to booking appointments. Sometimes, you don't even go online, to the phone anymore to call the service provider, to call the restaurant to book the appointment. You do that through an app, and you book your reservation, you book your appointment for what you need to do. So it is about having the platform and the technology to facilitate the options available and the financing options that we want to have available. There needs to be legislation and protection. The US Jobs Act, and I mean the acronym JOBS really stands for Jumpstart Our Business Startups. And that was signed into law in the US, legalizing the advertising and solicitation of securities. And the purpose really of it, or one of the key push, or the purpose was to legalize equity crowdfunding. So they were thinking about, look, we need to get some legislative protections around crowdfunding, and here comes the US Jobs Act. Certainly it involves a bit more, but it shows you that we need the legislation around it to protect the investors and also to protect the investees. Now, we do have a Securities Act in Barbados, and typically one can argue, well, this applies. But now you're looking at online platforms, persons giving their money, and I think there needs to be further consideration about those protections. But under the Securities Act, which may already give us an opportunity to kind of look and a place to start, a security means any document evidencing ownership or interest in the capital, debt, property, profits, earnings, royalties of any enterprise or proposed enterprise. So the basis and the framework is already there. We just need to really think through how to make this work and have access to financing more readily available in a number of platforms. Of course, there's going to be education and awareness. I'm sure there's some element of the presentation today that not everyone on the call, including the local options, is fully aware of what is available. Even if we've heard about it, we don't know, all of the key elements and aspects of the options and the different platforms, et cetera, that may be available. So with all of these things, we do need an element of education and awareness for what is certainly available to us. In terms of a comparison, again, if I put those into buckets across the different options that we would have talked about, access to financing, equity financing, there are private and public offerings, angel investing, primarily private individuals, crowdsourcing, mostly international platforms, limited access in Barbados, and perhaps that's where we need to do a quite circular approach to it. Maybe starting with education and awareness. What is it? How can I use it? How do we get it started? And having those conversations and getting that kind of dialogue started is going to be key. Peer-to-peer lending, there's one full service option available in Barbados, but we need to think through how we can expand access and opportunities for other elements and other options in Barbados. Ownership interest, as we talked about, and as a summary, equity in funding, and angel investing, the owner, the funder, the investor gets an interest in the business. Crowdfunding, two main buckets there, donation-based or investment-based, and peer-to-peer lending. The funder may get debt or may get equity. And as I mentioned before, the only option I'm aware of in the peer-to-peer space, P2P space, is the debt option for here on island. What's on offer for equity? I mean, straightforward equity. Angels could give you debt as well, but typically you would have an angel investor being an equity investor. Crowdfunding, there are rewards that you can get, or debt and or equity capital that may be raised as well. And peer-to-peer, again, it could be debt or equity capital. When are the funds paid back? That is a key consideration in terms of the investment horizon. For equity, you got to go through a sale of the equity, whether they sell it, back to the principal, or they sell it to someone else, or they get dividends. And typically in my space, we will talk about a return of your money if you're gonna, sell the investment, or a return on your money if you're gonna get dividends or interest in other cases. Angel investing, again, similar. It's equity investing, so the sale of the equity or you get dividends. Crowdfunding, typically it may not have a repayment. If it's donation-based, you are given your money in terms of a donation. There need to be other elements around equity crowdfunding in Barbados so that persons can figure out and you can determine through the terms and conditions of the crowdfunding how persons are get their money back, and there can be different structures. Again, nothing is stuck in a box these days. As long as you and the other party can agree the arrangements and you put that on the platform and these are the terms and conditions, then perhaps that is the box that you live in for that particular venture and opportunity. Peer-to-peer lending, typically debt, but doesn't have to be for sure. So the topic today really was to introduce and to talk through what is available, and structures and different options are coming on stream all the time. Our persons aren't reinventing the wheel. They may say, look, I want to have a different spin on how to access peer-to-peer, how to access crowdfunding. And I do think we really need to get the dialogue going on creating more opportunities around these structures in Barbados. Perhaps, and this is just me throwing ideas out there, perhaps the existing options that are available, whether it be enterprise growth fund access, how are they getting their financing in order to on land or to give the money to persons who are available? Perhaps maybe it is that some of these structures think through their own financing options. So, maybe government is providing some money, maybe they're going through fundraising in other ways. Maybe they do the crowdfunding to solicit funds in order to give over to micro, small, and medium enterprises. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out there, but we do need to get the dialogue going, and too often we get into talk shops and we don't push the idea forward. So I'm hopeful that does introduce some concepts around alternative financing and what may be available and what we can push the envelope on. And then, in terms of debt financing and equity financing locally, there are institutions who do have those available. Perhaps everyone on the call was aware, but not, have used it or not used it, but certainly something to consider. This environment is really going to force us to really start thinking through, as I mentioned before, in the resilience framework, the ability to relook at the business, to reassess the operational plans and the financial plans, and to think through what is available, and to know that the only option that you can go to is not going to the traditional banking sector. For a lot of parties, that may work. For other parties, it may not. For other parties, it may be easy to access that funding. For other parties, it may not. As you know, the traditional banking sector is heavily based on asset lending. So they do want collateral up front, and they want to make sure that that collateral is, a lot bricks and mortar for a lot of the time. A lot of businesses may not have that. So then you have to look at other options where maybe other collateral is part of the conversation, or perhaps it is that, it is an unsecured lending with certain criteria in place. Even if it means that you have a business development officer who is working along with you, who is monitoring the business, monitoring the performance, monitoring your financial position. But there are options out there. Some easier to access than others, and we need to get the conversation started. I would probably say, Betty, I'm happy to hand over to you, but this is where the important part of this segment is, the question and answer. and we can go back through any of the slides that were presented, but very, very keen to really start the dialogue. Not necessarily to make it a talk shop, but to really get the conversation going so that we know where to start.
Certainly a very comprehensive presentation of all the options that are available. And I agree with you, we do need to have a lot of education on these various options. I just want to remind those. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Betty. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think I
So
lost you for a bit. My apologies for that. I'm not sure what happened.
I'm not sure what happened, but you know how technology goes,
It's true.
especially when it is live. So I was saying, Raymond, thank you for that very comprehensive presentation, because you've given us a lot of food for thought on how to actually engage with people, with funders for businesses. And I was also trying to say that for those of us who are on Zoom, if you have any questions, could you please type them in the question and answer box at the bottom of the screen? And for those on social media, on Facebook, if you could type your questions in the comments. If you are on Zoom and you would like to speak directly, just use the raise the hand feature, and one of the team will let you know when to unmute so that you can ask your questions to Raymond directly. So Raymond, that has been quite a lot that has been said, and I'm a small business person or a medium-sized business, or I'm just not a big business, and I want to look for alternatives. How do I start though? Because there seem to be so many options. How do I start? Other than making an appointment with you and saying, come hold my hand and guide me, how do I start the process of looking for funding?
Well, look, I think, one of as we talk about the framework and the resilience framework, I think persons need to first understand what they need and their own internal planning. I don't want it to be underestimated around the scenario planning. And, again, recent calls that I've had in terms of, Raymond, I'm interested in searching for finance. It is, okay, well, how much money do you want? What are your options? Are you looking for debt financing? Are you looking for equity financing? What do you want from the person who is giving the money, the investor? Is it that you also want someone who can sit on the board and help you strategically, help you operationally? What are you looking for? So I think the first step is for businesses to truly assess their financing requirements. What it is you want the money for, what it is you want to do, what are the objectives, what are the long-term goals, the medium-term goals, etc. Once you're fairly comfortable with that, and I'm not necessarily saying that you get to that level of comfort alone, you have to, go to your advisors, whether that is a trusted advisor, a friend or family, whether that is, myself, that you come to a professional and say, look, I want to sit down and go through the options. I want to be comfortable with the scenarios that are facing my business and the financing requirements that I may have so that I can go out to the market and raise the finance. Then, I would say, look, if you're fairly comfortable, unfortunately, information is not, people say it's a commodity, but sometimes it feels as though it's like gold. You need to find it in the right places. If you are comfortable, you can go through searches on the internet for what is available. But I'm telling you, it's not easy to find, some of the options and really good options that may be available in Barbados. And the other thing that investors or investees are faced with is that as soon as an option pops up and becomes available, for some reason, 2 years down the line, it's no longer there. I mean, I can call some options that were available in the angel investing and venture capitalist type field or availability. These ventures get started, and because persons that may have borrowed money or persons may be invested and the investment didn't go as well, or persons that weren't honorable enough to pay back their obligations, the options folded, or they decided to just call it a day and find something else. So I would say the first step is, one, understand what your financial requirements are. You only get there by doing some research about your own business. And then it is reaching out to an advisor who may be more aware. And every advisor, including myself, is not aware of all the options because these aren't always publicly available. Through my network and the network of my colleagues, etc., we may be aware of certain individuals, high net worth individuals, that are willing to put money into a venture. And we can certainly, make those connections and work with the parties. But it is not easy, beyond the traditional, and even the traditional brings challenges, but the options do exist, and the steps toward getting there do exist, but you have to start internally first.
Okay, so as you were saying that, I was thinking maybe we need to take a little, as you were saying that, I was thinking maybe we have to take just a little step back because we've gone straight into the financing. But how do we determine what we need? How maybe we need to talk a little bit about a business plan, some sort of projections, and how do we develop that to be able to present something, whether it be to the angel investor or venture capital, or even the well, not necessarily peer-to-peer, but other forms of investment. How do I go to, what do I need to take to fund access and say, hey, I need $100,000? What are the things, what are the steps?
Yeah, well, I mean, I will give the executive of fund access to the ads, etc., to say exactly what is needed for them, and I'll talk about it generally.
I just use fund access because after all, they're one of our sponsors. But just
agreed. And I actually was on Fund Access's website, up to last night as I was preparing for this. And I think they have a good layout in terms of, what is available, what you need to do, etc. But it varies depending on the institution. For example, one of the other institutions that I was looking at, one of them, depending on the amount of money you want to borrow, you actually don't need a business plan and a lot of work around the projections. You do have to fill out the application. Within that application, there's certain particular questions that they are asking you around what you want to do, what the plans are, what is the likely repayment that you're looking for, etc. But not everyone needs a business plan. But Betty, you are absolutely right. Every single business, I think they rush to, I want money to do this, and then, I want $100,000. But you have to demonstrate to the investor, why do you want $100,000? What is in it for me? How are you going to repay me? How is this business going to survive? What are you backing this with? And then therefore, the biggest challenge to some businesses in terms of raising finance is that they're not prepared for the ask. And the important part is to stand back. What am I selling? What am I doing? What is influencing my business? Everyone is quick to say COVID-19, but some businesses have thrived during COVID-19 and some have not. So what is driving your business? What are the business drivers? How do I articulate that to someone who's willing to invest in my business? How do I package all of this discussion? Is it in a business plan? Is it in a financing plan? What do I need to go through? So if you remember, and perhaps, I'm not sure if I can share my screen again, because it may be very helpful to walk through those options. I'm going to try to share my screen again. So give me 1 second. And hopefully this does help in the question that you've asked, Betty, because I think it's it's so important to really take stock as to where we are in this process. Give me one quick second. And please let me know if you can see my screen again. Okay.
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, fantastic. And this really is the screen that I wanted to talk through, right? And Betty, this goes back to the heart of your question. As you can see here, let me just pull this over. The financing options, that's at the bottom of the slide. The financing options and the financing requirements and the financial plan comes after an assessment of the business. And I'm not saying that everyone has to go through the same assessment, right? And this slide, as I remembered, and I thought I would put it in here for financing to cover exactly what you're saying. There needs to be an assessment of the business operationally, strategically, financially, to determine, okay, what are my financial requirements, and then therefore, what are the options available to me? If it is that you're looking to raise, perhaps, going through the businesses and different sizes of businesses on the call today, perhaps it is that your business only needs $20,000 for what you need. Perhaps fund access is the right option for you. Perhaps if you're looking for $2 million for your business after going through this process, maybe fund access is not the right option because they have limits in any one for any one borrower, so to speak. So, but you first need to go through what are the influences on my business? How is COVID-19 impacting my business? How is the La Soufrière eruption impacting my business? How is the competition down the street impacting my business and the potential for cash flows? What are the initiatives that I want to put in place? Do I want to offer a different product? Do I want to offer a different service? Do I want to open a different location? What are the initiatives that I'm looking for? And how are those initiatives going to generate cash flows in and cash flows out of my business? And then therefore, what are my net cash flows? How do I put that into one package that I can go to the angel investor and say, look, here's my business. Here's what I want to do. Is this of interest to you? Of course, you're going to make it very interesting to them. But here's how much I want, and here's why. Here's the uses of the funding that you're going to give me. When you give me that $100,000, I'm going to go and buy some plant, property, and equipment within the first 3 months. And then the next 3 months, I'm going to expand. That's what the money is going to be for. And I don't need all of it right away. I need you to give me half now. You can help me and assess the business as I go. And you can give me the other half in the next 6 months' time or whatever the case may be. But it's about understanding where you are and working along with your advisor, whether it is a family friend, or whatever, or a professional advisor such as Deloitte or any other option that may be available to go through the options and prepare that plan so that when you go to the ask, you are prepared and you go to the right party or parties and be prepared. Because what is very demotivating is when you don't go to the right party and you get a rejection, that impacts all businesses, whether you're a board and you're looking for financing, you get a no, or whether you're an individual and you're looking for financing, you get a no, but you get the no because you've gone to the wrong party potentially.
Thanks. That sounds great. And because in addition to the lead up and the business plan, and so part of it has also got to be a very firm marketing plan, because whatever your product or service is no good unless people know about it and can actually, how do you take it to the marketplace? So it's a lot more. I think there's so many different aspects of just trying to get the financing to get your business to thrive. Now, I remember we had a series sometime back, not sure how many years ago it was, but I would say it was maybe about 5-6 years ago. I'm not sure. 2020 has been a blur and we continue 2020. So I know, but I know it was something very similar to Shark Tank, because we see Shark Tank on TV, and I think it was called Bank on Me or something, where people were able to put their proposals to a panel of people. So one comment is that maybe those funding agencies like Growth Enterprise and Fund Access should do a similar sort of television show like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, because this has a twofold effect. One, it advertises the business. It helps the it puts a spotlight on the business and builds awareness. And two, it also has elements where any local can invest in any business they see while watching the show, which will help to build entrepreneurial spirit locally. That's one of the comments. That's one of the comments.
That's a good idea.
I think that is an excellent idea, because there is just so much. You have given so much information, Raymond, and that I think is an excellent idea for how we can actually start. Because one of the other challenges we have, as the Prime Minister keeps on saying, or the Ministry of Finance, whether it be the minister or her ministers, is that we have too much money in savings and we have to find a way for Barbadians to invest. So how do we, as you were alluding to earlier, or not just alluding, but stating quite clearly, that these funding agencies need to find a way to create investments in them, whether it be the government giving them the money or whether it be individual funders funding them so that they can fund other businesses.
Sure.
I do believe that we have. You want? Sorry, I should let you guys give the chance to comment.
No. I was just going to say that every stakeholder has. I think every stakeholder has a role to play, and when we talk about some of the stakeholders creating a facility that persons in Barbados who have the funds available can see what is out there and kind of channel their money in that direction. Those investors need to feel, protected. I don't want to say safe, because with every investment is a risk. Putting your money in banks is a risk. Putting your money in a business is a risk. So investors need to know that it is a risk, right? There are risks involved, but you've got to mitigate your risk. You got to know the business, etc. You do that by educating yourself, etc. So I didn't want to use safe, because everything we do in life has an element of risk involved, but they do need to feel protected. And I think that's where the legislation and government as a stakeholder, as a policymaker, comes into play in terms of putting that out there and putting the policies in place to protect investors for these various alternative forms of finance that are coming on stream, are already here on our doorsteps.
Yeah, you're quite right, because in the traditional borrowing markets, there is legislation for deposit insurance. It may not be high enough, but what sort of protection is there for alternative sources of finance?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the legislation, there is legislation that exists, but it may not be specific enough. Not that you make it specific, you want to know a good set, but it's really right now focused on the traditional equity market.
Great.
Yeah.
I do believe that our sponsor, that one of our sponsors for today, Fund Access, is on the call, is in the meeting, and Esther Lord Graham, she's the general manager of Fund Access, and she also is here willing to speak and take your questions. So I would like to have Esther's mic unmuted and let her have the opportunity to join the conversation.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Esther. Thank you. First of all, thank you for sponsoring this important, assisting in this series of workshops. But what can you add to the conversation for funding small businesses?
Well, first of all, I would say that we believe, obviously, that Fund Access is one of the most viable choices that persons have. We provide a range of financing from $600 up to $150,000, depending on the business. And in addition to the financing, we provide business development, we provide technical assistance. So it is not only a matter of Fund Access advancing you some funds and then leaving you, on your own. We have a business development department and officers that work with you, sort of hold your hand, especially through those first months, and especially to those what we call business boost clients, which is our first tier of loan, who are persons that are new to business or would have started within the last year. And we do a lot of hand holding to make sure that the business structures are correct and that they do what they're supposed to do, because we are not interested only in the person opening a business. We're interested in the longevity of that business, and we're interested in these persons creating generational wealth where they can pass on the business to their children and so on.
Great, thank you. I think it's really important that it's not just a matter of handing over funds, but really guiding, that hand holding and guiding is really important. I just want to remind everyone on the call that if you are on Zoom, you can post your questions in the question and answer box. And if you are on Facebook, you also can post your comments, your questions within the comment section on Facebook. Raymond, do you have any specific questions for Esther since she's here?
Yeah, I think one of the questions I would have, Esther, is, what do persons need to bring in order to access the funding? Is it that they need a full business? Is there only an application that needs to be filled out? I see that as, a big question for persons. Does fund access also help with the business plan, or is that seen as a conflict of interest if you're also going to be giving out the money?
Okay, we only require business plans for projects, and it's no, let me rephrase that. We would prefer to have business plans for projects over 50,000. You don't have to have a business plan if you don't have.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It seems that we were trying to see if we could have got Esther on camera, but as a result, we managed to drop her. So she was saying you don't need to have a business plan, but I think that it is maybe not have a business plan in a formal business plan, but definitely everyone needs to have a plan, whether in writing or not. But I think she's back.
Hello.
And we should be able to hear exactly what she has to say. Go ahead, Esther.
Oh, yeah, okay. As a matter of fact, Raymond, our officers are not called loan officers. They're called project development officers. For the simple reason that there are projects that would need to be developed, and we assist with that. We don't assist with a formal business plan, but as I said, we don't ask for them unless the requirement is over $50,000. But before that, we go through the plan with the applicant, and we are able then to point out any shortcomings that we may see to guide them on the right path. But obviously they should have a plan, they should know what they want to do, but we guide them. And that's where officers are called project development officers and not loans officers.
Esther, are you able to come on video at this time?
I am seeing something popping up, so yes, okay. Actually, it tells me I cannot start it because the host has stopped it, so.
Okay. All right, so
I got a message saying I can turn on my camera, but I actually can't.
All right. Not to stress about that, because I think it's much more important that we get the information that we can have. So we can go on with the conversation. So you have the business, the project officers, and so you really, your thing then is to help someone from the embryo to actually the fulfillment of the project.
Yes. So what happens, the person goes online to our website, they fill out the application form, they upload whatever documents that they have, they set up their appointment, and they will get a message from us confirming the appointment. Our appointments currently are all via Zoom or WhatsApp chat for those persons that don't have Zoom. We accommodate persons at their level of technology. And I think my camera is on now. And So they make the appointment and they meet with the officer, and the officer goes through with them what they want to do. Based on our experience, obviously we can point out any shortcomings. Some person might come and say they only want X, but we would say to them, no, if you're going to do that, you will also need Y and Z. So that's what we do, just to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Before they are fully disbursed or before they actually start the business, we require that they attend a 2-day training program, and in which we go through the basics of actually running a business with them. And then throughout the course of their life, then our business development officers will be assisting them. And what we do then is they have the visits with the business development officer. We have additional training sessions all throughout the year. So we put everything in place to make sure that the client can succeed.
Okay. Have you had the level of uptake for your funding and so that you believe is desirable, or is there a need to have greater dialogue, greater advertising, greater marketing of the services? Because it seems to me that there is so much available based on Raymond's presentation, that there's so much available, but not necessarily that there is the level of education about what is available.
Yeah, I think that we can do better in terms of letting the public know exactly what is there. But I think it was you that made a point that sometimes funding agencies such as ourselves might require additional funding. Yes. And that's where probably we could have collaborations with the banks and with other agencies that can provide this additional funding. And it's something that FundAccess actively seeks out, where we try to have collaborations. We will try to have collaborations with persons for any additional funding that we may need. But there is some level of education that is needed.
Great. I think it was Raymond who had mentioned that the funding agencies, not just yourselves, but others, really be thinking outside of the box in how to get the funds. Yes. Raymond, do you have any other questions for Esther?
No other questions that immediately come to mind. Thanks, Betty.
And do we have any? I'm not sure if it seems to me that both you and Esther have been so thorough with your with your explanations and so on, your presentation, that people in the audience don't seem to have any questions. So we don't have any other questions in the chat box. So maybe we can just talk a little bit more, go into a little bit more depth. I remember there was one point, Raymond, that you were saying that maybe we could, in your presentation, that you were saying that we could have a bit more discussion on that later. I'm trying to jog my memory back to what that point was, but there was certainly a point that you had made that you would want it, that you were available to discuss that a little bit in more depth.
I'd have to. I know for sure. What is always interesting to me is the elements around the framework and how we get that started. I can't think of, and I'm just kind of going back through the presentation now to see that topic. I mean, for me, Betty, I think the three elements as we talked about, and I'll keep going back to those, in terms of really pushing what is available, the alternative financing market. And when we were doing, being aware, I mean, we interact with funding agencies all the time. But, there are some options out there that are not readily and easily known. And I don't want to get into calling the names of any organizations, including whether I'm wrong about whether they've folded or not. But, particular organizations that were in the business of pooling angel investors, we had looked at that, and once we started exploring it a little bit more, we realized it was no longer, it was almost defunct in a way. So I think it is about how do we how do we, through that education, that awareness, right? How do we make it available so that persons are aware of what is out there? Creating another website for persons to go to, it may work, maybe it doesn't work. Is it, that, yeah, I'm not sure what the right option is, but there are funding agencies in different ways that are available, but persons don't always know how to about the institution, and certainly, definitely not how to access the funding. And I really want to find the avenues to start the conversation. Certainly, what the Chamber has done today gets the conversation started, and that makes sense. But I'm not sure if it was something else in the presentation that you're referring to, or maybe your memory is jogged, but that's what comes to mind. I don't know.
That's fine. And I know that Misha and the team at the Secretariat are already so hardworking, doing such a great job. But I am sure that I can give them a little bit more work. This conversation, I think, has been great, and as you say, is the beginning. And I believe that the Chamber would be very willing to work with people like yourselves or Fund Access or whatever to be able to continue the conversation, because after all, our members benefit as long as you are able then to assist. Anything that we can do to assist our membership to be successful, that's what we would like to do. So I don't want to throw Misha completely under the bus, but I would like to to give our commitment to continuing the conversation, and to see how we can, even if it is a matter of assisting, giving some sort of support, let's say support to a television show where we can bring some of our key members to be the sharks as such, to assist people to grow their business. So Raymond,
maybe we should throw some. I was going to say that maybe we should, if we do have the time, we can throw a couple of questions to the audience. I mean, I'm always curious to poll the audience. Maybe an easy question, and it could be a yes or no answer in the chat for the participants in the various platforms that this is streaming on.
Yes.
But are there persons on the call that are looking for financing? That'll be my first question. Have there been a lot of challenges that have been encountered in searching for those options and accessing that finance? And if persons are willing to share, what have been some of those challenges? Because, part of the education and awareness is also for the persons who are going to facilitate the change to be aware of what those challenges are. And we got to hear those directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we got to hear those from the persons who are searching for the finance and the challenges that they're encountering in finding the options and accessing the finance. So, number one, are there persons out there searching for finance? I'd be happy to get those responses and to really talk about those responses in the chat. And for those who are willing to share, have there been challenges? But Betty, let me know. Is that something that we can throw out if we haven't?
Oh, most certainly. Because I believe that there must be at least one person out there who has had challenges. I see here in our chat, in the chat, that there is someone who has had challenges, but I'm not sure whether our technical people can get them to raise the hand or something to be able to speak a little bit more, because I'm not sure that they are currently on Zoom. So not sure which media they're on. So maybe we'll try just a little bit to see. What other questions do you want to throw out? It's a pity, Raymond. I know that you are so busy that we didn't have the opportunity to put these questions and really have a poll that people answer on screen. But they're great questions, because we could be trying to fix an issue that isn't there, or it could be a different type of issue that we're trying to fix. So we really do need to hear from the audience on what their experiences are.
I mean, one of the other questions I would throw out also, while persons are maybe responding to those previous ones, are, who on the call has heard about crowdfunding and peer-to-peer, and obviously I think persons have heard of angel networks, Shark Tank, etc. Those are all interesting, but who's heard about it? Who's heard about crowdfunding and peer-to-peer, and to what extent have you already tried to access that financing? I mean, I'm aware of persons who have tried to access, crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending platforms outside of Barbados. And what is the level of success in accessing those platforms outside of Barbados, right? I mean, this is a global market and a global world these days, and easier now to access these things outside of your market than otherwise. But again, it is the protections. So, who's heard of it and who's tried to access? I'd be very interested to see any number of hands raised or yes or no's in the chat, to see that persons are actually taking it forward and looking for alternatives.
Yeah, certainly crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a word that has become very popular over the past 2 years, I would think. But I think you had put up the names and of some crowdfunding platforms, and the one that jumps out really is GoFundMe, because it seems to me that a lot of people, not just businesses, but a lot of people had certainly jumped on the GoFundMe bandwagon some time back. I don't see as many requests recently for GoFundMe, but that certainly has been very popular, especially on Facebook, and so people are using that to just raise funds for, it could be a business or it could be just a simple thing. I want to go on holiday, fund me, so.
And I guess as they just say, there's a plaster for every source. So regardless of the funding requirement, I find there's always somebody out there who may be willing to put their money behind it.
Correct.
So as you said, maybe I need to fund my next vacation.
No, we know that those are expensive, Raymond. So definitely yes. Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
I think our technical team was trying to add someone to have a conversation with you about some of the challenges that they have faced, but I'm not sure how successful they are right now.
I would love to hear those.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Name is Rivelino Simmons. Had my own business for like last 15 to 17 years. I remember years ago trying to get finance and having $20,000 in LPOs, and I couldn't borrow money. It was virtually impossible to get a loan for $10,000 I wanted. Then I didn't know about fund access. I know fund access has been around for a while, but I think it's getting the word out there that these things are available, because it's just this morning you're telling me about growth enterprise innovation fund and things like that, and for years I was bootstrapping my business to get things done. I mean, for example, we would we developed some hardware and software, and we did the whole thing out of pocket, and eventually we got picked up. We eventually moved the thing all across Europe and Africa. But finance has always been a problem, and we just moved outside of it and find alternate, grouping together money, borrowing money from whoever to get it done. But it's always been an issue. And there's a lot of innovators locally, and they don't know where to turn, because sometimes it's not even the money for the loan. They want that help with the business and developing the business. For example, many people wouldn't know the billion-dollar company that was sold called what's the name of it? With the doorbell Ring. That came from Barbados. That was a group of developers out of Barbados developed it. Some guys came along and saw it and liked it, moved it, went Shark Tank. It did not get on Shark Tank. It was actually thrown off of Shark Tank. The guys eventually sold it for $1 billion plus to Amazon. And it's ideas are here, things are here. It's just that I've got guys developing stuff that we had a meeting with an engineer, IP engineer of the year in England. It's phenomenal. How do you get? But you see, the thing in the Caribbean, we end up doing 5 and 6 jobs, learning all aspects, when most countries they're only trained in one. So we start to understand things a lot better, especially development. But the whole structure of financing, and there's no one that looks into this aspect. That's why I threw out the idea earlier of the Shark Tank, and the idea like that. I put it within the chat because there's nothing like that. And sometimes it's not even the money aspect, it's the people to help you or point you in the right direction. I was actually lucky. I was in television for years, so a lot of people know me. I know people around the region. I know people outside of the region. So when I developed something, someone will point me in the direction of someone, and we got ahead. But other than that, it's total stress. I know so many people are developing some great stuff, and they're sitting down home on shelves.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, certainly something to think about. I mean, even from a Deloitte perspective, we are big on corporate social responsibility. So perhaps it is, with the other leaders, we need to go back and say, look, if this is a significant challenge, there's nothing wrong with, a Deloitte being the first point of contact. Not necessarily to do any business, but to say, look, here's what I'm looking for. What may be some of the options available to me, and just put the awareness out there, and that could be part of our corporate social responsibility. So, Mrs. Simmons, I'm glad that you came on. It put some thoughts in my head that we can expand, and probably even the chamber as well, right? Because I think as a member, there's nothing wrong with calling the chamber saying, look, I have a business idea, and I need to have some financing options, and maybe there's a list of financing options that the chamber is updating on a regular basis with what the options are, maybe even have those on the website so that persons know which bucket they fall in and who are the financing options that are going to pay them some attention, right? So there are different things out there that we maybe need to think through, but hearing the challenges, helps sparks the solutions.
Thank you very much for drawing those sorts of challenges, because I know that Barbados is a wealth of talent and information, but I never realized that Ring had been developed, but locally here in Barbados. I think just about everyone globally knows about Ring now. So thank you for sharing that. I think that Shanice has been able to put at least two of the questions in a poll. So Shanice, would you like to launch the poll?
Launches the poll. Are you able to hear me, Betty?
I can hear you.
It's really just to underscore that the chamber is really poised and has been looking at how we can continue to support small businesses and just to navigate the challenges. I think COVID has offered us not just challenges, but unique opportunities. And the success in us being able to tap into those opportunities and help businesses to continue to grow and survive, I think it will lies in our ability to collaborate. And I kind of want to just take up the challenge that you extended to us to partner with Deloitte and other entities to continue to look at viable solutions that we can offer to small businesses at this time. So, Raymond, I'll be coming to have a discussion with you along with Fund Access and other partners that always are readily agreeable when the chamber calls. Thank you.
I will let the partners and the leaders know I committed them. Hopefully, I'm still here by the time I do that.
So a poll went up, and these are the results of the poll so far. Have you sought financing access, and have you experienced challenges in accessing the finance?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really good if persons could answer that, because it gives an idea based on what we have been talking about, and even the alternatives because we may be having this conversation assuming that persons are having challenges, but persons maybe know exactly where to go and know exactly what they need to do. Now, it's certainly anecdotally, yeah. Go ahead, Betty. Sorry.
Raymond, I don't think that people know where to go. I honestly
agree. I don't think so either.
I remember, I do know that there are several options available for financing, but I think that often that is the best kept secret, or even if there are options, even to get that financing, even to get that financing, we have to jump through, it seems, so many hoops. Just like the person speaking, Mrs. Simmons speaking just now, where he was unable to get it. And why? We don't know in his particular case, but it always seems to me that there is a lot of financing. I remember hearing of how many millions of dollars are available for financing small business, but yet people are unable to access it or have not been able to access it. So we do have quite a small representation who have said no. The majority have said no, they have not sought access to financing, and therefore, obviously, if they haven't sought access to financing, they have not been able, they haven't experienced challenges. So we do need to have people understand, educated about what the financing options are available and how to go about getting those, how to go about engaging with finance people and using such financing to benefit their business.
Yeah. One of the things I would say, Betty, around, even for some persons, traditional forms of financing and certainly alternative forms of financing, they're not out of the taboo phase as yet. So you would find sometimes a micro business or a small business, they want to keep it all to themselves. They want to grow the business, but they don't want to share in order to expand, because they don't want to share their idea, so they don't want anyone potentially to steal their idea, or two, they are not ready as yet because they're not making the returns. They're not really willing to kind of open themselves up to share potential losses and maybe potential returns. But running a business is a risk. I don't know that there are any riskier group of people than business owners, because it does take guts, it does take passion to kind of start your own business and go out there on your own and grow the business. But I find small business owners sometimes need to let go and to really understand, what do you want to do with this business? How do you want to grow? And part of that path is to say, I need an investor. I need someone to put money in at 30% of my business, and I understand what that means, and they understand what that means, and here's how we can grow together. Because financing really is a tool that helps you to grow and helps launch your business. And when you don't have that cash flow, when you don't have that financing, it keeps you stuck. And I think part of it is the own mental capacity to break through, not wanting to get out there, seek the financing, etc., and really stagnate your business when there's no need to. But everything comes with a risk.
It does, and it is understanding that 100% of zero is zero, and 10% of 10 million is 1 million.
Yes.
So sometimes you have to give up, or 90% of 10 million is 9 million. So sometimes you have to give up something to really to be able to thrive. So a question here from Sherry Ann Hudson in the chat, and I'm not sure that you covered this. One of the challenges for small business is the cost of the statutory obligations, the PAYE and the corporation tax, and so VAT, etc. The cost, the BRA. Is there any financing for that?
Oh, I think that is an interesting question. So, in terms of sort of cost of it, meaning it is costly to pay the taxes and all that, or is it costly from a cash flow perspective that you don't get your VAT returns for a period of time? Which one?
I believe. Well, okay. Let's just put me in her place because I'm unable to ask her what exactly she meant. But I believe that it is very costly from the point of view of cash flow. So how do you finance those payments, but yet maintain sufficient cash flow for your working capital, for your general working capital?
Again, I would say, look, that goes back, and you raised a good point. That really is a working capital type issue, right? In order to have finance, in order to move your business, whether it's your a product and you need inventory, and then you're waiting for the sales until the inventory can monetize, etc. And in the meantime, you may need to kind of pay over VAT and all that. And what does that do for your cash flow? But that's around planning, right? Well, how much are you looking? What are you looking to buy? How much are you looking to sell? Because there is finance and working capital. I'm sure, depending on the level of business, if you work alone, I almost said loans officer. I'm sure Ms. Graham at Fund Access would wrap me on the knuckles for saying loan officer. But if you work with the project officers or the project development officers, whatever the right terminology is, to say, look, I'm having a challenge with my business around working capital because, by the time the end of the year, I have to pay taxes, I'm paying VAT all the time, NIS, PAY, figure that out. I need some financing to kind of bridge that gap so that, so I can get through the hurdle. So there certainly is working capital finance, but you have to demonstrate the need. You have to know the need for sure. Of course, you may be experiencing the need because you know that you don't have enough, but you really got to understand and know the need. How much is it, and when do I need it? When do I have to pay VAT? When am I generally in the hole, and by how much? So that when you do approach Fund Access as an example, they can give you the level of funding that you need. One of the key things that Ms. Graham said before is they educate the borrowers and the partners that they're working with. Because sometimes people come in for $5,000 or $10,000, but when they assess the business and the need, they said, no, you need more than that. You need this amount in order to fund the business. And sometimes that is critical because you can try to hold back and borrow less money, but then that doesn't do the business justice. And you really need to expand and know the need in order to make it happen. So if there is the conversation around working capital financing, that is available. I'm sure Fund Access would give the options. If there is a conversation that the level of taxes may be too much, I don't know that I can answer that. That probably is a policy discussion that needs to happen.
Yeah, thanks. The question on the working capital financing and so is important. And I think a lot of people are not aware that if they're carrying high receivables, that there is financing available in some instances where you can actually finance those receivables so that you can free up some of your cash flow, because you can't do business if you don't have cash flow. And I think that the overall message has got to be that it is better to better to help with the cash flow so that you have a surviving and thriving business, rather than to literally force that business out of business because you're unable to finance the working capital.
Yeah.
So there are options. It's a matter of understanding what your issue is and therefore asking for help.
Absolutely. Betty, I probably do need to start making some moves. I'm not sure. Do we have much longer, or can I?
No, I think yeah. I was just having such a wonderful conversation with you, Raymond.
Me too.
But I really want to thank you for the presentation. I think that was wonderful. Especially the Q&A session turned out good, really good information. Really good information there. So I just want to take a break before we move on to the voter thanks. I just want to take a break for another one of our videos, a short break, just a 1-minute break for a video from one of our sponsors, the Business Employment Center.
Are you searching for temporary or permanent workers? Do you want to avoid the cost and hassle of recruiting new staff? Or would you like access to cost-effective services that will allow you to stay focused on growing your business? Well then, the Business and Employment Center has you covered. With over 50 years experience, you can count on us to provide you with the right staff when you need them. Our services include temporary, contract, leasing, permanent recruitment, or temp-to-hire staffing. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced many businesses to adapt and change how they operate. with some of your staff getting ill, isolating as a result of COVID-19 exposure, or simply with them taking vacation. As the premier provider of temporary staffing in Barbados, we can temporarily fill their positions with competent and reliable substitutes, fast. Our large pool of candidates have gone through assessments, skills testing, and background checks, and are on standby for assignment. We also provide other services that help you focus on growing your business. Contact us today and ask about our payroll, business support, and courier services. You can visit us at Kensington Court, Fontebelle St. Michael. Call us at 537-7243 or visit our website at www.bbempcent.com for more information. At the Business and Employment Center, our mission is to help you succeed.
Gentlemen, we've come to the end of today's program, and there's so many people that I want to thank. First of all, I want to thank our workshop facilitator, Raymond Haynes, who's taken the time out of his very busy daily schedule to facilitate today's session. I hope that you have taken some great information from what Raymond has had to say, because he has provided such tips and insights to help you along the way. Raymond, thank you so much for sharing with us today, and we really look forward to the next session that we have with you, because as Misha had piped in to say, we're really looking forward to working with you and others to ensure that this conversation that we've started continues. I'd also like to say thank you. I'd like to also say thank you to the Executive Director of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce, Misha. Misha, thank you for being so gracious with me throwing you under the bus to assist our members and others. And thank you really for spearheading this series of workshops, because at this time especially, it really is important that we help our businesses to survive and thrive. So thank you. I'd also like to extend our deepest gratitude to all the businesses who stepped up to the plate to sponsor this event. Gold sponsor, the Nation and the Business Authority. Silver sponsor, Fund Access. Another silver sponsor, the Business and Employment Center. Silver sponsor, Deloitte Barbados. Bronze sponsor, Guardian General Insurance. And bronze sponsor, RDL Eagle Trade Inc. We appreciate your willingness to contribute in a tangible way to the continued success of our new Thought Leadership series. I'd also like to thank Esther Lord Graham for stepping up and coming on camera at such short notice, because that wasn't planned, and really and truly we have got to be flexible, and I think it was great how she was willing to come on camera and really be able to speak to our members and our audience. Thanks to you, our members, small business owners and participants. We hope that you found this series and discussions beneficial and that your queries and concerns have been addressed. To the media, we thank you for your continued support and your coverage of today's event, and to the dedicated team at the BCCI Secretariat who worked tirelessly to pull this event together. Your efforts in ensuring a well-organized event are very much appreciated. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the technical team who supported us. Yes, we had some glitches, but we worked through them. So in closing, I want to encourage you to utilize one or many of the financing options or tips shared today. So once again, thank you. I wish you a safe and productive day, and I hope to see you at the final workshop in this series on Friday, December 3rd, via Zoom and the BCCI's Finance Facebook page at 10:30 a.m. The session is entitled From There to Here and Everywhere, Efficient Shipping Logistics, and it will be facilitated by Mr. Collis Williams, Logistics and Supply Chain Director and Consultant at RDL Eagle Trade Inc. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye.
It is often said that the longest journey begins with the first step. And here at Fund Access, we give you the courage to start your journey, to grow, to live your dream. For more than 20 years, Fund Access has been empowering entrepreneurs through access to finance, business training, and technical assistance. So whatever stage you're at, we can help. Call us at 228-1366 or visit us online at www.fundaccess.org. Fund Access, empowering entrepreneurs.
Life is complex. Everything interconnected, in constant flux. A simple shift in focus can reveal hidden issues and unearth new opportunities. At Deloitte, we make it our priority to look again and to dig deeper beneath the surface, analyzing the many intricate issues that businesses face, providing insights that help turn risks into opportunities, disruption into growth, information into transformation, helping our clients focus on the heart of what really matters. And with these insights, even the most complex problems can become new possibilities. This is what we do.
Are you searching for temporary or permanent workers? Do you want to avoid the cost and hassle of recruiting new staff? Or would you like access to cost-effective services that will allow you to stay focused on growing your business? Well then, the Business and Employment Center has you covered. With over 50 years experience, you can count on us to provide you with the right staff when you need them. Our services include temporary, contract, leasing, permanent recruitment or temp-to-hire staffing. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced many businesses to adapt and change how they operate. With some of your staff getting ill, isolating as a result of COVID-19 exposure, or simply with them taking vacation. As the premier provider of temporary staffing in Barbados, we can temporarily fill their positions with competent and reliable substitutes, fast. Our large pool of candidates have gone through assessments, skills testing, and background checks, and are on standby for assignment. We also provide other services that help you focus on growing your business. Contact us today and ask about our payroll, business support, and courier services. You can visit us at Kensington Court, Fontebelle St. Michael. Call us at 537-7243 or visit our website at www.bbempcent.com for more information. At the Business and Employment Center, our mission is to help you succeed.